sounding.
You're talking underneath it. You want to be like on top of it. You want
My mouth is right above it.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Do that the whole time.
Yeah.
Mustachioed individual. Cool beans.
Let's talk about packaging.
Cool beans. Yeah, let's. Yes, let's.
Yeah.
So how we kick this off? I want to have a clean start.
You know this? No,
no, this is how we start.
We've been going.
We legitimately
We've been going.
just
Hit the button.
I don't listen to audio messages. I love when people send me audio messages. I feel like I'm on a talk show or something, you know?
Yeah. And I'm probably the one sending you because I love.
I've got a list of people that are like, I don't like texting, but I do like recording my thoughts and sending them to you. And I love it. But I don't listen to that. I don't have time.
Which to me is incredible that you can read faster than you can listen.
I think that's not a super that's a thing. People, it's
Really?
auditory visual. Yeah. And I'm a big time visual. Like I can look at it and I can remember like on a page where the words are that say the thing.
Yes.
But if I'm listening to you while I'm reading it, I'm not listening to you. Like I just don't, you can talk or not. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And
we'll
it's
win
so much
over
quicker.
the audio.
Right. Yeah. It's just the processing or whatever.
Well, I would say I'm a visual person as well, but it's different because I feel like reading is not just seeing what's on the page. It's actually making comprehension, like actually the reading comprehension side of reading takes processing. I wonder how many of our listeners are like that. I don't like talking on the phone as much as I would love being in person. And in the olden days, hopefully I'm getting better than this, but in the olden days, I wouldn't respond to people's voice messages or like I'm talking about like if they left not a voice message like what we were talking about before. Machine. Like an answering machine, yes.
Remember answering machines?
Back in the day, I wouldn't respond and if they left me a answering machine kind of voice message, I just wouldn't listen to it and I wouldn't respond because it meant I had to have a conversation. I had to listen to it first and then I had to have a conversation on their time. I don't know. It was just so complicated, but I realized I was talking to a friend of mine who was a teacher and she said, I bet you're not an auditory learner. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not an auditory learner. I have to feel people. Like I have to feel their vibe. And so I don't have to, but I love it. Like if I can be here and I can know that you're annoyed with that microphone right there.
I'm just fighting this thing. I don't know why. I had it just right.
And then I can get a vibe that you're not listening 100%, but you are listening.
I am though. But see, because yeah.
So it's so interesting to me though that.
Well, now I'm like, you're going to be suspicious. You're like, he's not listening because I said I couldn't understand anything. But if it's only when there's something competing, right? Like I did lecture, but I would write it down and I can do, and honestly, this is what's really weird is I can listen to you way better if I'm doing this than if I'm just sitting here trying to look like I'm listening to you because that is me. I am putting on. If I am making eye contact with you, it is a conscious decision to make you think I'm a real person and not
a real person.
Yeah, because people like that. People respond to, they want you to like say their name when they're talking to you, Jessica, and I never do. I don't do. I know your name.
Right.
Why would I? Because I read it in a book that people said that you should do that. So I just can't.
It's the tricks of communication.
But yeah, no, I am definitely a visual learner, 100%. I can do the other stuff. Apparently, right brain, left brain is just baloney, and that's not a real thing. But the visual, auditory, and then the kinesthetic thing, that's probably, you're more in the you want to touch the shirt before you don't want to order stuff online that you can't send back in case it feels weird, right?
Right.
I don't care about that either.
Interesting.
It is solely does it look like I think a shirt? That's all it takes.
Wow. I think it's fascinating.
There's a website where it shows you the words one at a time really, really fast. And it'll start out slow. And you're like, you probably think, and it's like one word at a time. I'm doing this because that's how my brain does it, right? Is like on a page. And I'm like, you probably think like the captions at the bottom of the screen. But this is showing you one word and then the next word really quick. And it's like, you probably think this is like a normal speaking rate. And it's like boom, boom, boom. And it's showing you. And then it starts speeding up. And it's like, but did you know that you can read, 357 words, and it just keeps going faster and faster and faster.
Wow.
And then you can crank it up and see how fast and you can't read all of it, but it's crazy if you.
Well, but I bet you're still, because you're talking about speed reading. Speak faster.
The thing is, right, and this is where it gets into jobs territory, is it's hard to, when you're good at things that people, that you're supposed to be good at. I was just talking to somebody about resume stuff, and I was like, I can learn stuff really well, like learn stuff quickly, and I'll know what to do. And they're like, well, but that's like everybody. You have to do, but that is something you would never say you couldn't do that. You would never go into a job interview and like, one of my weaknesses is I don't like learning. I don't want to learn new stuff. Right? You hear
That's
that?
true.
And so, but if that's one of your strengths, it's kind of like, well, that's like a baseline. Like everybody can do that. So I can't go into an interview and be like, I read real good. That's not
but you're hitting on something that's true.
It's true. But I don't have actionable like KPIs for, you understand? Like you can't just get into a spelling contest with people.
I know from career counseling, there's like a likability score and some assessments that are more soft skills related. And it's true. Like you can quantify how much somebody is likable versus someone else. And we see it in the workplace. We know it's needed, but we're not going to use a metric for that.
Right.
And also, I mean, do we trust that metric? Because it is so subjective based on, do I like you? Does, that kind of thing.
Well, and you
so
can
it's hard.
people get taking a test and none that just says that you're. Math, like, is totally different. It's visual. But it is not quick. I can do it, but I just have to try harder, right? I wouldn't be able to read 400 words a minute or whatever in math. I would have to sit and write all the steps to practice. And yes, today, as you guys will find out, figured out a way to get, I think, what qualifies as an engineering degree without having to do nearly as much math. But there's other things you can do. You can't be good at everything.
But he was able to explain, and I'm super excited everybody gets to hear from Carson, that the skills that are important and that he does like about math, that I think a lot of our listeners who feel the same way that you just described, that they like math, but that they don't want their life to be consumed by doing equations or having to do calculus or whatever, he can enjoy and use the logic and use the, all those things in his job.
Yeah. That's great.
Without having to do parts that he doesn't like.
I'm excited. I think you guys are gonna enjoy it. And we had a good time.
Oh my gosh. So, I had no idea what a packaging scientist / engineer until Carson. So thank you. We're excited.
One way we're going to use AI is you can face swap videos with any other face now. And there's just nothing anyone can do about that.
So you could make me Tom Cruise real easy. Like there's a lot of.
But why would I do that? Like, there's so many other faces. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Carson is a packaging scientist, and I didn't know that was a thing. I went to college with packaging science majors, and I didn't know what they did.
I've also heard the term packaging engineer, but it's not, at least at Clemson, it's not part of the engineering college. So I'm super interested to hear what you do because I honestly don't know.
Which one? Are they the same?
Gotcha. Yeah, they are more or less interchangeable.
Okay.
So the reason that it typically falls within an engineering realm is because it's an applied science. So my background as far as how I even got into it, I'll start there, is that I started at Clemson University with a desire to be an engineer. I was going down the path. I was a first semester junior as a mechanical engineer, trying to get through that, and calculus started actually totally kicking my butt.
You made it 3 years into engineering?
Yeah.
Like mechanical engineering?
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. That's a long time. That's a lot of engineering.
I invested a whole lot of time into it, and I just couldn't get through Calc 2. I took it 2 times, and I was still getting a D, and I was like, maybe I can bang my head against the wall and keep trying for this and kind of muscle through it, or let me see what's out there. And I found out about the career services or career guidance counselor folks at Clemson, and they helped me do an aptitude test and all kinds of stuff to be able to kind of understand what I liked, what I didn't like, kind of point me at, well, here's some good options, here's what's not. One of them was packaging. And I said, that sounds pretty interesting. They said, why don't you go and talk with the dean of the packaging department? And so I did. And I was like that. I talked with them and I sat down and they just described kind of the cursory overview of it, which is just the fact that this is packaging science at Clemson and in other schools is an applied science. So it makes sense that a lot of engineering mindset kind of folks gravitate towards it because it's using engineering principles. There's a heavy focus on like structural dynamics. So there was a whole class taught by Dr. entirely about just the formulas and the mathematics and the science that you need to know from a structural standpoint. Then there's a whole bunch of like biological understanding of the molecular details of how certain components are going to interact with
Like
each
chemistry?
other. And so there's a big chemistry focus. Had to do organic chemistry. Didn't take the non-organic chemistry major version of that. I had to take the full-blown one because it didn't line up with the schedule. But made it through. Once I got to packaging, grades were great. I was hooked. It is phenomenal. The other element of why it's interchangeable with packaging engineer is because places like Michigan State that process a whole lot of packaging science or packaging engineer majors, they have it fall within their engineering department. So it's one of your tracks for engineering.
So in some schools, it's going to be like an engineering. It's going to fall like you would electrical, mechanical. And then for others, like I know it's within the College of Agriculture at Clemson.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it was born out of food science.
That's why.
Back in, I don't remember when it was, but before my time. And then now it's merged back in to a food science
They keep
dual
moving
thing.
them around.
Just because there's packaging science has to do with food mostly.
That's what spurred it to become its own thing here at Clemson.
Oh.
Michigan State, I'm not sure what pushed it, but there's only like 5 schools that do a packaging degree of any kind in the U.S. And so it's a pretty small
I didn't know
niche of academia, and yet the placement statistics are phenomenal. They're better than engineering, actually. They're at least as good or better than engineering. There's a huge demand for packaging engineers, packaging scientists. I go by, and all of my business cards have always said packaging engineer once I got out of school. But yeah, my degree is in packaging science. But
Can you become a packaging doctor?
you can have a doctorate in packaging science, Clemson. I don't know if Michigan State offers a packaging engineering doctorate. I was working on a master's in packaging science here in Clemson, but tried to do that and work at the same time, and I don't have Rob's skills of
Tough.
just
Wasn't.
Well,
loving school enough to
It's
really
also,
manage
I
that.
took science for teachers and math for teachers.
Oh, that's
and
pretty cool.
It was fine.
Good for you.
We learned about, 7th grade science. Like, there's a.
Don't knock it.
I'm
that
just
was the
saying,
class I got
I'm
a
tapping
D
out.
in
Hey, I feel you.
education.
That is, you should not say that. The math professor I had was so bad that the entire next 3 years I was at Clemson, they emailed me asking me to please fill out this. It wasn't like a course evaluation. It was like
Not the Rate My Teacher website.
No. This was like, hey, we need to know some stuff about this lady. I was like, I tried to tell you when I was in the class. I'm done. I got my 3 hours. You're on.
I never want to think about this again.
I guess she's still there. I don't know. It was rough.
Can we admit that math can be hard at all different levels depending on the person?
I was in this. I did what you did, but I did it in high school. I was a junior. I was in pre-cal, and I got to like Christmas. And if the guy beside me had not known how to do matrices on his graphing calculator, I don't know what would have happened to me. I would be destitute right now, probably, because I don't think I just like peaked, was done.
You can become an engineer and not like Calc 2.
Yeah, but you got to pass Calc.
Yeah.
Like,
But I had to
you do
pass
have
it if
to.
I wanted that whole thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but you are an engineer, is what I'm
no,
saying.
you
You
are an
are an
engineer.
engineer. You didn't have to pass
You
Calc
did
2.
it.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
So I found a way around it.
Yeah, you did.
Found a way around it.
That's
Worked
right.
out well.
For me, when I first heard packaging scientist, the only reference I had was like when I packaged things to send it overseas, and I just used tape and a cardboard box. So what do you do?
Here's one thing it's not is all the skills that a mover has. So when you think of someone who comes to your house and helps you move, they're really good at like packing out a truck,
Tetris-y kind of stuff.
kind of
right?
some of that
Yeah,
Tetris
okay.
stuff.
Okay.
My wife really struggled with the idea that she had a father that did moving as a profession through college, I think it was. And so like we would go on a family trip and she's like, why are you not very skilled as a packaging science person to load out our minivan with all the things that we need for our trip? Like, I can do this better than you can. I'm like, you absolutely can, because that's not what I'm trained to do.
You're not a packing
is so
scientist.
I'm not a
interesting.
packer.
You're not a packing scientist.
You're not
You're
a-
a packaging
Yeah.
scientist.
Okay,
So-
that's a good distinction.
And it has to do with packages. I mean, but what people don't recognize, and what I didn't even recognize, and what got me so hooked, is that packaging is everywhere. Everything is packaged. It is inescapable. If you want something to go from yourself to somewhere else, it's got to be packaged. And some thought has to be put into, and some money has to be spent to package it, to protect it adequately, and then get it there. Not to mention all of the logistics elements. So like it makes sense. And there are packaging professionals that work for UPS and for FedEx because logistics is a huge arm of that. And logistics is highly involved, and we're all significantly impacted by that as well, which we all saw around 2020 when all that really kind of came to a halt. But it keeps the world moving. What my life looks like can be very different than what a lot of packaging professionals. I have had my career associated with a couple of companies that have been in packaging sales. So they have sold the packing peanuts, the tape, the boxes, you name it, anything that can help protect your product when it goes to where it's got to go. I've worked for a few companies that sell that. My roles there have been as engineering support. So a salesperson in those companies have not necessarily had packaging backgrounds. It's rare. Most people don't know about it at all. And salespeople can come from all over with all kinds of different backgrounds, and they can be good at selling packaging without ever having really known it that well. But packaging can get very technical. And so one of my first roles was design engineering for packaging systems and packaging products. So what that meant was a salesperson would come across an opportunity. A customer they wanted to overhaul their entire way that they got materials from where they were processing them. So these were making hydraulic pumps. So they wanted to overhaul how they got their pumps, which are heavy, not all that fragile, but they can hurt themselves if they roll into something. And they needed to move them from one facility to another and then come back. And so that's a perfect opportunity for what's called a reusable loop of packaging materials. And what I helped them with was developing reusable packaging thermoform trays that would hold those pumps just right. And they were designed to actually hold multiple different pumps within the same, what's called a cavity. So one cavity was made in 6 positions on the tray that then fit into a big pallet thing. But each of those cavities was specially designed to interface with different pumps of different sizes and shapes to where you could you could ship all 6 of the same kind in one. You could mix and match across, I think it was like 10 different pump styles because of how it interacted with it. And they were like close enough.
Like an ice cube tray? I'm imagining like you had to create something like an ice cube tray that fits whatever that hydraulic
pump. Yeah.
Pump was. Yeah. Yep. Like the hydraulic thingy. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
But it had to fit multiple purposes is what you're telling me.
So that was one that I worked on. A salesperson doesn't have the expertise to really doesn't really have. So part of the degree is a lot of software training of learning things like SolidWorks or AudiosCAD is specifically a program. AudiosCAD is a specific program for designing corrugated boxes. There are hundreds of different kinds of corrugated boxes that can be made. It is staggering.
There's the little ones, the ones that are a little bigger than that, and there's the ones that are skinnier this way but tall this way. And then some places now just take a piece of cardboard and just wrap it around whatever you're ordering. And does that count as a box? Or is it like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Is that kind of thing with packaging guys? Like where you're trying to does it stop being a box and start being an envelope or a mailer?
There are a lot of classifications.
Are these triggering phrases I'm saying right now? Are you okay?
It opens way more than we could even discuss here.
Wow.
Suffice to say, all of that
so much to unpack.
Bingo.
So I'm going to say it
That's
again.
Hilarious.
So much to unpack.
Packaging in a nutshell.
I'm so proud.
You should be proud.
Now.
All that falls within corrugated. So you've got single face corrugated is the kind that you can wrap around itself, and then you've got single wall corrugated, which is your typical box, double wall, triple wall.
And you learn all this in college, or you learn this in the job?
Learn all that in college. I'm familiar with the Bojangles kind of style box where like it's got the 2 tabs that come together and then the flaps
it's like
on
a little
the end.
house.
There's a design style that within AudiosCAD, that program I was mentioning, you can say, I want a box that's that shape and I want it to be 8 inches this way, 7 inches that way, and 5 inches this way. And it will spit out exactly how that would have to be cut in the right spots, folded in the right spots to all come together exactly how you would want it to. And there are hundreds of those different design styles.
And the computer does that?
And that
you don't have to
software,
think of it in terms of geometry and...
No, it's already built in, but you can create your own. So there are people making new ones all the time. And that's a special level of skill that I never had to do, but I got a taste of kind of how that gets done. It's all formula driven, super crazy cool stuff.
Do you do it like at your house? Like if you have like Christmas presents, do you like formulate your own boxes out of like, you know, raw materials? Is it like an art? Is it or you have a, you know, like pottery or something? Like I could see, like you're getting really excited about a cool box, right? Like
you could.
Do you
Yep.
have you
Yep.
ever done that?
So it's cost prohibitive unless you're in college, broke.
Oh, because where does the box come from? You got to like make it. You got to on the computer. You could do that, but you got to get a box.
You can imagine
Okay,
whatever you want. But if you're a packaging science student and you have access to this software, I did make my own box to transport some fishing poles with me on a vacation trip that I took. So yes, it happens. I'd say it's rare. I haven't done it since college because I haven't had access to a data cutting table. So
I was gonna say, what is it? What is the thing? I'm picturing like a giant. Is it like a laser thing or like a cricket type?
you're on the. It's very Cricut-like. Yeah.
Okay.
Just scale that up about 10 times.
Then it's cardboard. You put cardboard in there like a blank or a piece or something, and then okay.
Yep, and you can choose from all kinds of different corrugated. So there's all kinds. Here's the fun thing. So I've been saying corrugated, and you've been saying cardboard, and both are fine. In the industry, corrugated is what it is called officially. I had someone like really challenge me on like, so you're telling me that what we all call cardboard, all of you are like just laughing at us or something, or like I don't know. I'm not really entirely sure, but there was a really big hang up for this guy that. So we call it cardboard, and that's wrong.
I'm not threatened at all by your knowledge of paper products.
I'm super glad.
I will defer to.
I'm super glad.
I can call it. I mean,
It's
it's a type of, because you can have cardboard that's just like thick paper, right? But the corrugated is what is that?
Technically, the cardboard is like a cardstock kind of paper,
Cardstock.
which we call paperboard.
Paperboard.
And
you guys are now you're just making it difficult. Yeah, I can tell that.
I can do this. I'm
It's a language. It's a language.
I'm very
All right, so
skilled.
we got paperboard, we got corrugated.
Yep.
So, and I'm picturing paperboard would be the box, like, because you get your Amazon box and you open that, and there's a box inside of that box,
Potentially,
and that would be probably not good, right? That would be just floppy box.
dependent
stuff.
upon
Maybe,
So sometimes
right.
it's another regular corrugated box, but so cereal boxes, paperboard.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of like Lego boxes, paperboard. Doesn't have the fluting to the inside. That's the
fluting,
distinction.
That's
Do
the word.
your kids talk like this? Like when they say, hey, like when you're like,
Jeez.
break down the box,
Do you
and
talk
they're
to
like,
your-
break down the paperboard.
Do you talk to your family about
Yeah, do
fluting?
they know the language?
I do use corrugated, and I think one of my kids at one point has mentioned like I've never heard anybody else say that. No, I have not like trained them on like, hey guys, we got an Amazon box. You're not going to believe what kind of flute this is. This is the best flute. I gotta say, this is the best flute.
But
My
do you
favorite
notice, like, out and about, you're just like, oh man, they've the old packaging on the whatever. You know, we've talked about this. Like, I am super
you already know
interested,
the
obviously.
answer.
In fact, talking to you was one of the reasons I'm doing this now, because I was like, people don't believe me when I really want to know this stuff, because they think, what?
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
So
like,
this whole operation
Yeah.
was just a whole ruse to get me to make your job easy to describe what the heck packaging is. In second.
But, I mean,
The world does need to know what packaging scientists, packaging engineers do.
yeah.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
We've known each other for a while now, and I was super interested. And I think you thought I was taking you for a ride a little bit. Like, you did not really think that I was actually. And I was like, that's fascinating. And you were like, it's fascinating to me. What's wrong with you? And so here we are, because I genuinely, like, I've sent you several pictures of peanut butter jar lids.
I have received
And that is packaging.
and saved.
And, you know,
those photos.
you go by your Jif and you take the paper off the top, and it's a perfect clean plastic circle. You go to Aldi, the best peanut butter, but they get the glue and the paper, and they
don't spend the same amount.
That's why it's cheaper.
that
That's
Jif
why
does.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have differences, and you have found some of the shortcuts that they take, or some of the decisions that get made, and it's a whole multifaceted element that is the world of packaging. So
Do you ever like design like just the most amazing container for something, and then they're like, oh, we gotta make this a cheapie now, and it just hurts your heart? Has that ever happened to you?
that is an element of something that I did want to talk about, actually. That's going to be something that happens because packaging is unfortunately an area that is as you guys might notice, or based on this whole dialogue, and the whole reason this is a thing is if it's a thought, which a lot of people don't even think about it, they're like, oh, that's just a box. Like, how much could that cost? Or like, it's just a box. We get them from Amazon every day. Like, but actually does cost money. And there are tiers of quality. There are tiers of,
oh yeah,
you could go a completely different route and have something that's much more effective than a corrugated box. You could go a different route and have something that's much more recyclable than a plastic bag. My chief frustration around looking at things in the wild, I guess you could say, has just been how a lot of corporations make it very clear that packaging is an afterthought at best. And some of the interactions I've had with different customers for the companies that I've worked for, that becomes apparent. There are much better ways that we could package things with the end in mind of how they will end up.
And, I like this, yeah.
And in the world of packaging, we call that a cradle to cradle mentality. There are great options from like biodegradable plastics to just alternative options that cost a little bit more, but they are much better. They are arguably much better for the environment, that corporations just will not make the extra expense. It does have ramifications because we as a society don't value that.
I think Apple has demonstrated.
Apple cares.
There are literally
about their packaging.
unboxing, like a whole field of unboxing videos. People just open stuff and show you all that like material. And I know that's not why people watch it. You wouldn't watch an unboxing video with nothing in the box. But you also...
I might. Sounds like you might.
Well,
but you're right. Yeah. Most people would not.
Like,
most
it's part of it. And I think that, yeah, you could spend some... You could do it. I don't know. I'm encouraging, if you're a giant corporation... You've been doing
even
this?
If you're a small, I would argue even the smaller corporations, that's the hardest part because you don't have the extra pennies. It doesn't feel like you have the extra pennies.
Absolutely. And if it's an afterthought, okay, I spent
That's
all my R&D budget. I've spent all of my testing budgets. I've done, all this different stuff, and then I really only have this left if I'm gonna pay my employees. And so I mean, I'm not saying it's the easiest decision in the world to make, and that totally get that. I just know that we can do better. And I know that there's a big element of we as consumers, we as a nation, and just that comes down to even just like local leadership.
Carson, do a lot of people in your industry feel strongly about packaging, recycling, and that sort of thing? Or is there kind of like a divide?
Every person in packaging at least thinks about it, at least would like to do something about it. But in a lot of ways, it feels like your hands are tied if you can't pass that extra cost on to a consumer. It's a very multifaceted, very complex situation.
As we get away from societally shoving our razor blades in a hole in the bathroom wall, are we? Is it getting better?
Oh boy! See, I'm on track. This is something Rob talks about.
If you've ever bought a house that was built between the 1950s and 1980s, and people lived in it, then what they did when they finished with their disposable razor blades from their straight razor is there was a little hole in your medicine cabinet, and you stick that baby right in there. And then when somebody goes to redo that bathroom in 2005, there's just a wall full of rusty used razor blades. And like, what are you supposed to do this? It's like, well,
where did they go?
It's fine. I don't think about it anymore. I just
in the wall.
Stick it just in the wall hole, and there you go.
Wow.
And I guess people in Spain weren't doing that, or maybe just weren't shaving probably. But it's just it's gross, and it happened for decades. And so I'm just hoping like maybe there's a chance that we're not going to be that way forever. I don't know.
I mean, I don't have a razor blade hole in my medicine cabinet anymore. So, but now we pay for plastic plus razor blade systems that are a whole lot more expensive.
And talk about packaging on those things. Those are so hard to get open.
Like packaging, metaphorically, packaging wise, is it getting better? Do you think since you started? Are people more conscious? Because I see like the papery things instead of the plastic bags, starting now. Like somebody's trying a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. I'd say that there are some maybe sectors, maybe different companies, different things. They've invested in figuring out ways to make cheap stuff like paper do what the foams were doing.
You ever done anything with mushrooms?
No, can't say that I've done anything.
This is on topic. I just went on a field trip to a mushroom farm, and the guy there they grow, these fungus for
Which are
purposes.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's super
The
interesting.
little that I know, they're
Very
incredible.
sterile, environment. But they grow the mycelium. Am I saying that right? I think
I
white
think that's
stuff,
the word for it.
underground part, the actual fungus part, into these little like brick shaped things. And he was saying, I was like, why don't they build like igloos out of those? Because it's super lightweight and very strong. And he said, well, that's a lot. You got to support the weight and all. He said, but they're working on packing peanuts made out of mushrooms, which I thought was
The mushroom mycelium.
cool. Yeah, the powdery stuff.
Okay.
So-
Amazing.
I didn't know. I was hoping done that or could do, or maybe you're.
Well, now I do. Now I know.
Maybe I shouldn't have told. Maybe it's a secret. I don't know. Sorry, guys.
So, like, my role has always been, and a packaging engineer's role in any design capacity has always been optimizing how much you spend against how much impact that will have on the protection of the product, and then taking into consideration what does this look like when it has to be shipped. Because there was a time when you could make the box as big as you wanted and it only went by weight. And now also the size of the box matters because obviously it's going to take up more space in the truck. Mm-hmm. So space is money. It all costs. But there was a time when people were doing big air pillows and it's like, yeah, we can put a 10-inch air pillow in and it's going to cost you the same to ship it. And that was kind of a heyday of doing stuff. And then obviously your box was bigger. So boxes were, they were selling more material in boxes and stuff, and then shipping prices changed to be impacted by the size of the box too, and so then people got tighter on how much that's called void fill around the product, and then your boxes got smaller.
So is it
spent on corrugated?
So it's a trade-off.
Everything's a trade-off.
Everything's a trade-off.
Nuanced, super impacted by all kinds of different things. One of my professors would never answer outright a question that was asked, like, why would we pick this plastic over this plastic? And the answer was always, it depends. Because it depends on so many, and it doesn't always depend, it never depended on the same thing twice, or like,
Wow.
the same kind of factors are not always at play.
It sounds like really you're a packaging artist.
It could be construed that way,
Could be.
like one at all, but maybe could you elaborate on why that would be?
No.
Great.
It's just
An art and a
you're making a lot.
science.
No,
It's an art and a science. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
subjectivity. You're making a lot of decisions.
Sure.
You're getting to-
Yes.
yeah.
It can fall on that spectrum of things that people describe as, it's part art, part science.
Definitely want to hear what you would call like unspoken rules around packaging science, especially in your job.
If you're going to do packaging, you know this, like you just need to go get a packaging degree. And they taught me everything that I know, and then I learned a few other things. So like the degree at Clemson was phenomenal, and it was described as kind of a shotgun approach of, we're going to expose you to a ton of things because this industry is wide and varied. Then you kind of pick a focus that you want to dive in on, and then you're off on your own for your career.
I knew a guy that he worked at a greeting card company, and he just did the envelopes for greeting cards.
But have you ever had an envelope that wasn't the right size for the card? Or did you
Yes.
try to match up? Oh, darn it, I forgot to get the envelope.
Cut the side off and then make a little, that's no good.
That was awful. And somebody put the thought and effort and the time into making the right size envelope for that card for you so that you didn't even have it. They did such a good job, you didn't even realize that they had
Didn't
done a
even
job.
think about it.
That's the way a lot of packaging
so
is.
true.
That's how I would describe kind of packaging for the world, is that you don't even recognize the amount of work that goes into it because it's done so well, usually. And then there's always the complaints of like what you said about the YouTubers of, well, I got this and it was dirty dish rags and stuff. Like, so when it's done wrong, people notice, but
Right.
it's done wrong so rarely, I feel like.
And you take it
that
for granted.
You
Yeah,
take it
because-
so much for granted.
That sounds like an unspoken rule. Like you have to be okay with being the guy who like kills it, like really does a good job, but doesn't get the credit. You know what I mean?
One Clemson packaging student did an internship with, I don't think it's Nabisco as the entity, but whoever owns Nabisco Oreos, he was working with them as an intern and helped develop the new way that Oreos are packaged with that peel and then reseal
A
ability.
Clemson student did that?
A Clemson packaging science student was participating in making that happen, and maybe it was testing. I don't know exactly what it was, but I hear about people hearing about packaging science because they took a tour at Clemson. They were thinking about coming to Clemson as a student, and it became a part of the tour guide's spiel. They would go past this building and they would say, by the way, a Clemson packaging student helped develop the Oreo packaging that you see now today, because before that was garbage because you couldn't reseal it. Yeah, like people worked really hard on that, and they're like, it's artistry level, like innovative, incredible,
Yes.
and it's super unsung. But I'm not doing any consumer packaging really, so I'm not in that same camp, that same ballpark. But when I started in packaging at Clemson, changed how I existed in a grocery store.
Wow.
I would just look at everything in the grocery store totally different, because it's like, oh, they decided on this, and oh, they decided on that, and oh, wow, they took this route for this, and this is, so it was phenomenal. I wanted to buy all the really cool glass packaging stuff to where my wife and I had to decide that, like, okay, you can pick like one cool thing per grocery trip, because we're broke college students. We can't afford you to get, $8 bottle of cranberry juice. I don't know. And I might not
Based on the packaging.
Yeah.
entirely based on
It's
packaging.
the pricey. We got a
That's
jar
so
of
funny.
jelly. The jelly was fine, but it was like this perfect like pint glass side with a lid that snaps on. And
Yep.
you want to talk about, my wife was very excited.
It's a win.
It's like
It's
a
a
water bottle.
win-win.
You put it in your sealed. It's amazing.
This is artistry, though.
Yeah.
You're right, Rob.
I was serious.
No, you're
Like,
serious,
so,
and I'm agreeing with you 100%. This is artistry, although I have seen it bad art, good art, and the bad art.
Yeah.
How many
it's interesting.
forts are there in a standard packaging science, like college on a campus, or in a wherever you are at your job? Build a lot of forts.
Did not build any forts in
Executive
college. My children absolutely benefit from my
yeah.
access
Oh,
to
yeah.
packaging materials.
Man.
I have in my garage right now some triple wall corrugated sleeves that make not only cool forts, but also really durable sleds.
That is a good benefit
so
in your
my
job.
kids absolutely make a whole lot of forts because of what I have access to. So there's always corrugated flying around.
Build a tiny house out of it.
Just about.
Man.
If you don't mind it disintegrating
Yeah.
So not only is packaging unknown, but then there's I didn't find out in packaging until I got quite a few years into my career, some good ways to help make sure that maintain a work-life balance within it. Packaging actually is super niche, and yet there's still a ton of avenues that you can take. But because of all the things you've been exposed to, you can start to think about in your junior, senior year, I like this. And part of the degree is doing an internship for one semester. A colleague of mine, he ended up leaving a job that he was at because his role was more or less just making sure that they had packaging at the manufacturing line and keeping it stocked. Now, that line, he must not have had a lot of support upstream of people buying that packaging to make sure it came in on time, because he said everything was always on fire and he was always getting calls outside of work of, hey, we got to have this packaging. Why don't you have this packaging here for us? So paying attention to a role when you're interviewing for it, if it's with a manufacturing, might be a good question it might be a good question to ask of how dependent is the manufacturing team on my role? Because the manufacturing support roles I've had have been entirely removed from the day-to-day, we have to have you here right now looking at this, and more so taking the time to analyze how stuff is done and then come back with a proposal or a solution for how it could be done differently. Not as much the packing people or the people working with packaging need me on a daily basis.
Right, I've seen a ton of jobs where you're basically, you don't know this going in because nobody would take the job if you did, but you're like defensive line, right? You're there to sort of take the fall if the other guys, and then you're going to get phone calls, like you said. And what are you going to do about it? So
I'm super glad you said that, though, because I think based on our conversation, I would have thought very much this is a office job that you're thinking a lot. You're having to strategize, like what you mentioned.
Very cerebral.
It's you're thinking, okay, the size of this and how much does this cost and all that sort of thing. So the time frame for execution is, I would imagine, you have more lead time. But you're saying, depending on the job, you may be more involved in the buyer side, or you may be involved in executing the actual shipping. So just go into interviews an ear for that.
Yeah, have your eyes open to kind of what your role will be, because every packaging job is very different. I've had been to a few places within my career. I did have a role where I was working for a manufacturer of packaging materials. and I was actually feeding production the instructions on how to make that packaging. They were plastic corrugated kind of sleeves that could be reused and returnable in a loop with companies, so it felt really great to kind of support that whole thing. And I actually worked really hard to provide enough, or to make sure that I always provided information, because we had 3 shifts there that ran, and if they wanted to transition to a different project and they didn't have the right information from me, I would get a call at 11:30. Hey, this isn't quite clear. Can you help me understand this? And that was no fault of their own. A huge element of my career that I at least wanted to mention while we talked is that standardizing like processes has been a huge part of what I've been able to do as a packaging science or packaging engineer, and where we were doing manufacturing. Just a simple process of creating a document that the sales team can provide me of what they're looking for, that has all the information I'm looking for, because it's easy to just say, I want this. And well, I need to know how many you want, and I need to, because that makes an impact of how we're going to do it. If we're going to do a whole lot of them, it needs to be processed this way. If we're only going to do a couple of them, I need to process it this way. So all the different details that I needed, they were not, before I got there, they weren't getting captured. They weren't, you had to go back to the salesperson, or the salesperson had to go back to the customer. Like, oh, can you tell me color choice? Can you tell me? So just standardizing or creating a process of, okay, salesperson fills out this form, I take form, I put it into this queue, I get this done, and I have that has always made a huge impact in my career. And the place that I'm working, making estimates for packaging project, we are much more focused on solutions to packaging situations, more so than just, I can sell you tape for 5 cents cheaper. There's a lot of people doing that, and we can't really break into that market all that well unless we have a ton of volume and we already have a ton of places to put it. So what's much more effective, and what I've really had most of my career around, has been solutions-oriented design work or sales roles that are not just, I can get you a box. It's, I can get you a box actually that's going to fit your need better, cost you less for shipping, like what we were talking about before of, if it's bigger, I can make it smaller for you. Or I can come up with a completely different solution that's actually going to save you money in the long run. Coming up with solutions to packaging problems has been most of what I've done, and that's been really rewarding and much more removed from any kind of manufacturing.
This is making me think, you probably have really great strengths in futuristic thinking. Like thinking, here's what's happening today. If we keep doing what we're doing today, this is the problem we're going to face.
Keep sticking those razor blades in the wall.
That's right. Here's what's going to happen. And so it probably makes you really great at backtracking, to be able to go, oh, okay, well, tomorrow, 20 years from now, or a year from now, that box is going to break down. Here's a better solution. Let's use this material today, because in a year it's probably going to, would you say that's true?
I've never thought about that. That's a very kind compliment, but it definitely sounds like something that could be true.
That sounds, just hearing you talk about it, and also how important communication is, that you're probably not wanting the same conversation 7 times, make the form.
Yeah. I have, that's another element. That's shown itself to be really important, and an element of most packaging. Going to have to be someone that can interface and that can communicate and dialogue and connect a lot of different groups together.
Soft skills.
Interesting.
There's those soft skills again, man.
You're really going to want to focus on the soft skills. Exactly.
You got to be able to talk to people to make boxes. Who knew? What is the secrets of packaging? What do you wish people knew about what you do? All right.
Yeah. You had a wonderful prompt. I don't know if you want to ask that instead. If you want to cut and then say,
which prompt do you want to
say we have a magic wand. What do you wish the world knew about your job?
You do it.
Go ahead.
Sure.
That's my favorite
She loves that question.
I could tell.
Okay. If you could wave your magic wand and you could tell the world something about your job, what would it be?
That is a really good question. And a lot of our dialogue here has been just, I want people to know that it's out there and that it's a thing and that there are degrees for it, that there is a demand for it. It is just as crucial and important as any engineering degree out there. I'm actually my company is looking for a co-op in packaging right now, and there are at least twice as many companies looking for co-ops right now as there are co-ops at Clemson.
Wow.
Able to be filled. So like the demand is there. It's super, super cool. It is, like I said before, it's an applied science. So I found, I really felt like, okay, I could become an engineer. It kind of feels like it's all ethereal, all cerebral. Yeah, it's nebulous. I can do anything with it, obviously, but like, what will I do with it? Whereas packaging is like, okay, we're going to take all that good information, all that important stuff from structural design to chemical makeup of things, and we're going to point it at something to make it better. And I like that. That helped me a lot. So that's what I would say. If I had a magic wand, I would just want the world to know more about how cool packaging is and how great of a degree and career it is.
You did it. They know. You told them.
Did
You're
I
doing
do
your
it?
part. Awesome.
We did it.
Yeah. I always want to know, like, are you hiring? And it sounds like you're, that'd be great. Yeah. I'm not going to make any more packaging puns. Actually,
Please, I'm here for it.
We're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna wrap it up right here in a box. Thanks so much for coming in. Tell us about packaging. This is fascinating, just fascinating. And and you're hiring. So that's great. You got to get a degree first. Got to get a 4-year degree in packaging science, I'm assuming. Or not?
My company is growing. Advanced packaging is growing, and I can't speak to if they're hiring particular roles right now, but
you're hiring students.
We have hired 4 people in the last year. So we're growing.
Cool.
Thanks so much for the chance to talk about it.
Sure thing.
We're grateful for you.
Appreciate you guys letting me just talk your ears off about something that's really
I love it.
Well, we're grateful for you too, Carson, for being that hero behind the scenes that doesn't get the credit for the wonderful
artist.
The artist.
You think you're a packaging scientist.
I love Carson. He brings it. I had no idea that they are sort of the heroes behind the scenes. They don't always get the credit for being so creative and
you don't think about that
problem
stuff.
solving.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking at packaging totally different.
And looking at it just all the time, right?
Oh,
Has it happened for you?
Oh my gosh. It pops out everywhere.
It's been a minute. Like it's like the TV show where like you're wearing glasses to show time has passed, like the John Mulaney joke. Like we're very different people now. That was a couple weeks ago. And have you spent that time looking at packaging?
Oh yeah. In fact, I threw a tea party that was candy shop themed. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about how can I make this special? And all the girls are going to go away with tons of candy. Do you know the number one thing I thought about was
trash.
The packaging.
Oh yeah.
I noticed the trash. That's the thing is I noticed the trash afterwards. And I was like, wow, how did they get these gummies to stay soft? Mm-hmm. Oh, the packaging. How are we going to make it look cute and sell it in our little candy shop in the tea party? The packaging.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was pretty cool. I have not tried to make it. I did make an envelope. We had a birthday card that we made, but then I was like, well, I don't have an envelope either because we didn't have a birthday card. Guess what you can make out of a piece of paper?
Love it.
So thank you, Carson.
Yes.
Definitely would encourage if you work at Aldi and you are responsible or could tell me, I want to know about the decisions that have been made. I love Aldi. I'm not anti-Aldi. I want to be super clear about that again because I know I talked about it. I'm saying it again now. I don't want the peanut butter to get stuck on the inside of the lid so bad. I haven't been sending him pictures like I was because now I'm afraid he'll think I'm just an insane person. I got 3 kids. We eat a lot of peanut butter. We don't have to live like that.
We can do better. Packaging scientists.
It's not
packaging
their fault.
engineers.
There are solutions.
Exist in this world.
I need a cheaper solution
yes.
that Aldi can make happen and still sell me super affordable peanut butter.
Love it. We got to have dreams in life.
I feel like I should apologize. I don't mean anything. I'm not even
room for improvement. There's just a little room for improvement.
It's just constructive criticism. Everything's great, guys, except for the peanut butter seal. 100%.
Keep doing what you're doing.